Hello and welcome to this week's episode of My Granny is Irish. And we have Nick again this week. How are you, Nick? How was your week?
Yeah, I had a very interesting week. I was happy with our first podcast of the year. Thought it went well. Response was very good, which is good. And we're really entering this podcast Irish podcast wars,
Oh, are
and
we?
taking it head on. Well, I think we are, and I think there's a gap there for proper conversation. I listened to some of the other Irish podcasts. Um, I won't name them. Some that lost some of their co-hosts before Christmas.
Okay.
It's not easy to listen to, so I'm glad we exist.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, yeah, I'm glad. I'm definitely glad we exist. We obviously are tremendous. Yeah, you do probably listen to more of the Irish podcast than I do. But yeah, so what we were going to do today is you had an interesting week. I think you're going to talk about you attended a conference, Breaking Point conference. We are also going to do some further criticism of the Irish media and how it is a glorified PR machine for other people in the Irish media. We might also have a look across the water at Britain and see how bad a state is it in, or is it some of it just driven by, again, media hype. You wanted to talk about a piece, I think, that I did actually on this book, Against the Machines by Paul Kingsnorth. It's kind of an well, it's not just anti-tech, it's arguably on anti-progress, which I would have thought I put you in the very pro-tech bracket, and we'll see where that gets us. So you were at a conference where you called on called Breaking Point.
Yeah, so Breaking Point is an organization that the goal of it is to foster open conversation and dialogue across the spectrum, right, left, up, down, whatever. And so the guys organized a brilliant event yesterday, and it was the title of the event was "Does Ireland Have a Vulture Fund Culture?" And we had three panels of speakers, some high profile names, including world famous director Jim Sheridan. Um, I spoke for a little bit, not that world famous, unfortunately, but there was some great stories about just some of the heartbreak that some people have been in for the last 15 years trying to battle against these vulture funds. And what I brought to the conversation was that I was actually a funds lawyer. I was setting up some of these structures. And it's we invited these structures in, and now the question is, what are they doing here? The reason we invited them in was because of the crash, but my argument is that we've allowed them to run rampant, and these very tax efficient structures still own so much things, from nursing homes to student accommodation to asylum centers, and all of that is fine except for when they're dealing with taxpayers' money, and obviously homes, Irish people's homes. So a very interesting
Okay.
conference.
Yeah, so tell me, I mean, I know this probably is frustrating for you, but maybe at a very basic level for people like me and maybe others watching. I've heard the term, of course, vulture fund a lot, and even the term vulture is always used in a derogatory manner in terms of stripping down assets. Obviously, vultures strip down a carcass. But perhaps at a very basic level, I think I want to know is, so what is a vulture fund? What do you have a problem with? Are they favoured in the tax system, and also are they foreign held funds?
Yeah, so the vulture funds, it's a derogatory name. They don't like that name. They don't call themselves that. They're credit servicers, providers,
Oh,
and they're basically
okay,
Goldman Sachs. They're big, massive pools of private equity, mostly American, but sometimes Chinese and European as well. And they are they were invited in to buy up all these bad loans in 2012, 2013, and all these bad performing assets. And they did that. They sold them all off a couple of years later at tremendous profit. And this all feeds into NAMA and the NTMA and what happened. But what the issue I have is that, yes, they get extremely favorable tax loopholes, and you'll hear Pierce Doherty say this in the Dáil. These sweetheart agreements, and he's not
okay,
wrong. And my point is, you know, I'm all for capitalism and entrepreneurship and innovation. Like, sign me up. but not when you have different rules for people at different scale. You have more favorable rules for people at the with the with the most money, and less
Yes.
favorable rules. So it's better to be a bigger landlord than a smaller landlord. And we're seeing the development of this. The new rules coming in March are an additional add-on to this, where uh, the government are now penalizing small landlords, and we're seeing an exodus of them from the market, and that's contributing to the homelessness crisis. But the beneficiaries of this are the large scale landlords who might have anywhere from 10 properties to 5,000 properties.
Okay, so Irish property being held by foreigners. I mean, historically, we've always had a problem with that. But okay, so to keep it at a very well, maybe a situation that people can remember or relate to. Even I could. So were the Glaziers who took over Manchester United? Were they an example of a vulture fund, and they landed it with a lot of debt, right?
They
Or were
could
they?
have. I actually don't know the example of the Glazers.
I think
I only know their sporting assets.
okay.
They
You know,
probably
I
do.
think you were. It's because you're 15 years younger than me. This was the big thing at the maybe even around now is that they came in and they landed the club with a lot of debt, which I believe is
Oh,
still
oh, no, yeah,
there.
yeah. In terms of Man United, yeah. Sorry, they that was a leverage buyout, and they bought it using debt and not much of their own money. Yeah, that's similar but different to this.
Okay.
They're with a vulture fund. They're not putting debt. They're buying bad, underperforming loans for 10 cents on the dollar of the price. So they're buying it for nothing at the bottom, because
Right.
Ireland was crying out for liquidity. We had no money. Um, and then 2 years later, the market, rebounded, and they sold them all off for double the price that they bought them for. And then some of them never left. So what happened was the vultures came in and they became cuckoos. And you've heard this term of a cuckoo fund. And what a cuckoo fund was that the developers were buying, were developing housing estates of 200 houses in Maynooth. And instead of selling them off one by one to, the likes of me or you or whoever else, they were selling them to a cuckoo fund at all 260 in one go. And then the cuckoo fund would rent them out. So,
Okay.
this comes to the right to own your own home, and not build to rent. But this is a huge area, and there's no like silver bullet of what's right and wrong, because build to rent does make sense in city centers. And these
Yes.
funds can build up good high quality apartment blocks, and because they're going to own them and rent them out, they're incentivized to build them well so that they don't need much repairs.
Yeah.
But then you can't own your apartment. But it does make sense if you're in the city center and you're a student or someone in their 20s who doesn't really want to own a house yet.
Yeah.
There's checks and balances to all of this. But my point is, they've been allowed to run riot, and there's been no wing clipping of these vultures.
So give us an example then of, as you said, I think you said that some people had really fallen on tough times, or they've been sort of well, terrorized is my word, of perhaps some of the stories that you heard at the Breaking Point conference.
Yeah, there's some really hard stories. Like, some people were nearly close to tears as they were giving their speech. But there was one man from Tullamore. I think he might be well known. He was in the local papers for the last 10 years, basically, and he bought his house. He was on 25 grand a year, like, and himself and his wife bought a house. But the loan they got in 2005 was a monstrous loan that they were never able to go. They were never able to pay back. It was like 15 times his wage. And so he was paying back the mortgage all the time, but then the market crashes, and out of nowhere, he didn't understand the contract he had entered into, and his
Yes.
loan gets sold to a vulture fund. The house is no longer his. He's rendered homeless. And so what he had nothing left to do. He protested around um, permanent TSB's bank branches for a number of years, and that was just one. Jim Sheridan is the world famous director. He gave a speech about how he had to take on the banks, and it's not that he wasn't able to pay off his mortgage, or he has a house, but the loans that he entered into, he ended up in court because they he didn't, again, they didn't understand the contracts they were entered into. And what some people will say is that the contracts, what the courts are doing is malicious. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but they're saying that because there are there's literally thousands of these cases going through the courts all the time, and
Yeah.
we're seeing it all wrap up um, at the moment. But if any one person was to win against these funds, everyone would win.
Yeah,
So
well, that's precedent, right?
yeah, so exactly. So look, their theory goes that there's an incentive for the judges, the barristers, to just rubber stamp all these through in favor of the banks and the funds. I'm not saying they're right or wrong, but that's the argument they're making.
Okay. I mean, so what is it? Why are if there's a favorable tax regime, that you only do that for something you want to encourage? So what is it in the what? I mean, you've set out the very basics in terms of they were encouraged back after the crash because Ireland didn't have any money. But why is the regime, as you said, continuing to favour these, particularly in the area of housing, when, as you say, at the same time the government is going to hammer much smaller landlords, which I think on a basis you're going to have a more personal relationship with. And, the papers love to hammer the small landlords, but they don't seem to have picked up on any of this. So why are the government continuing to encourage this, especially in the area of housing?
Because lobby groups, this is what people say, lobby groups, there's an awful lot of money behind these funds to persuade ministers and policy in this direction. And in my old job as a fund solicitor, I've literally sat in these meetings. I was taking the minutes. I was a junior
Yeah.
lawyer, and you can see how the sausage is made in that, um, highly professional, well trained lawyers, accountants, service providers are representing their clients' interests. They're on the phone to revenue, they're on the phone to their local minister, literally, and saying that this is what they want. But on the other side, the people representing, the homeowner or the renter might be like a union. Catu is one of these, and they're just not at the races when it comes to a seasoned equity partner in one of these law or
Yes.
accounting firms. There's it's an unfair fight, and nobody in the Dáil understands like the technicalities of these financial instruments, financial structures. Like it's very complicated. I wouldn't expect them to, but part of my whole thesis of why I wanted to get into politics was because we need to encourage people with 10 years or 20 years financial experience into
Yeah.
government. And if we don't do that, we're not a society. We are a take what you can get economy. And that's what Ireland is. We are a tax haven. And we're a brilliant tax haven. And the point I always make is that not all funds are bad. Ireland has a brilliant funds industry. You can come here with billions of euros, and you can set up a structure, and you can go invest in emerging markets in South Africa or in Africa or Asia or wherever you want, and that's fine. But my point is, we shouldn't be turning the gun on ourselves by allowing these structures buy up Irish assets. And this is something Trump actually put out 2 weeks ago that nobody in the Irish media reported on. But he put out saying that no, homes should not be a financial asset there for people, and institutions should not be able to buy homes. For him to say that is pretty big. Whether he acts on it now is going to be another thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always something very fundamental, right, about homes or even land. First of all, it's a limited resource, right? I mean, I guess you can build up high, okay, but the land itself, particularly in Ireland, is obviously limited. There's very historical reasons that why Irish people would be very attached to their home and not, renting is famously sort of unfashionable here, but not in the same as UK, but not on the continent. And it is, yeah, I mean, I've always been very skeptical of people who sort of see their home as sort of the security. Yes, I mean, everybody wants security, but the to sort of see it as a profit or a massive cash cow, I've always been very nervous about it. And I think there was an Irish law, this is years and years ago, maybe you covered it in the EU law as well, back in, when we were both law students, where they wanted to limit the amount of land, that was owned, was in foreign hands. Now, it wouldn't have been vulture funds. The case is so old; it must have been something else. And I think they had a sort of a requirement that you had to live in Ireland, or you there was some sort of Irish link. And I think that was struck down at EU level. It was one of the earlier cases. So there is, I think, a long conservative. On the one hand, people will say, well, you signed the contract, right? Buyer beware. You signed the contract. You didn't know the terms. You should have known the terms. This is capitalism. Deal with it. But I think there is a long conservative tradition, of it's just essentially not exploiting people or not exploiting their desire to own a home. I assume then individual TDs haven't really. I mean, that guy that you were saying that was protesting. I assume they haven't had much luck in, say, lobbying individual TDs who can then take it higher.
No, they have not. And there's another point I'd just like to make is in Ireland, wealth creation or how you build wealth has always been through property or your home. And that is the generation above me, my parents or whatever, the Celtic Tiger, that's what it was. People were incentivized to buy houses, and there are brilliant tax advantages of owning a home as your family home and selling it on because there's no capital gains tax on that. And
Well,
that's
there
why.
should be. That would be
Well, no,
crazy.
I don't think there should be. But my point is, and this is where this is what young people needs to realize is that now when you're locked out of owning a home, it's not that you're just locked out of owning, a roof over your head. You're also being denied the chance to build wealth tax free. And my
Yes.
point is, I will rent. I am a renter. I will rent for the rest of my life. If you made investing in certain pieces of land or stocks or something else tax free as well. Like I'm actually I'm okay to rent as long as you give me another avenue to build wealth with. And at the moment, it's impossible to build wealth. There is no mobility between classes in Ireland. And I don't understand how Labour Party, Sinn Féin aren't sticking up for their base here. Because if you're, born into, a deprived area in Dublin or anywhere in Ireland, it's very unlikely that you escape that in Ireland. Like it's very hard to move outside your class, and that's just all got down to do with tax and incentives.
Okay. Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think you're right on that. I haven't seen the social mobility statistics for a while in Ireland, and they are probably harder to track because you just have well, it's seen to me anyway, there is a working class and a middle class.
Well,
But
they're bringing everyone down. Like the
yeah,
direction of money is downwards. Like everyone is now like in this, the squeezed middle,
yeah.
and so that's the direction of travel. Unless you can really reach escape velocity of like hit a home run of a winner of a company that does 10 million plus, you're not getting out of it. Or unless you have, you're really rich family, you're just not getting out of it.
Well, I think also owning your own home is just important in terms of security. If you have a family, they can tighten up the rules around renting, of course, and make it harder to evict people. But ultimately, owning your own home does give you that extra security that you wouldn't necessarily have when you're renting. So it's not, to me anyway, it's not just about wealth creation. But I wonder if not that I wonder if that Breaking Point conference is on YouTube.
Yeah,
I would
we
imagine it is.
it'll be on YouTube, and people will get sick of seeing clips of it because I think there'll be a
They're
big
gonna.
campaign to get this up over the next week or so. So
Okay.
definitely check it
Well,
out. Point on X or YouTube.
okay, well, look, that was, yeah, that certainly sounded interesting. I mean, continuing sort of in a similar vein in terms of the stories not written, I noticed anyway. We were talking last week about how Pascal Donoghue's potential conflict of interest in relation to the World Bank, as he decided to give them an extra 10 million that they hadn't asked for of Irish taxpayers' money, and then a few months later, I think he went to work for them on a salary of 600 grand. And somebody, I think you saw it as well on Twitter, somebody had tweeted that not a single none of the Irish papers picked up on it on the following week, and it wasn't in any of the Sunday papers, which is true. But there was plenty of what I call the PR machine in Irish media. Now, I think, the media is always, there's always an element of PR to it, but I think the Irish media take it to extremes. So you had Claire Byrne on an RTE show, namely The Late Late on Friday, explaining why she's leaving the RTE. I'm not sure why we need to know. Then there's Ryan Tuberty within the Irish Times, telling us, I don't know, I'm a different person now to who I was a couple of years ago. I've evolved, which is obviously fantastic. I like to think I've probably evolved a little bit over the years as well. In the same paper, I think on the same weekend, they've decided to push RTE's Laura Fox. Now, I don't know any of these people because, well, I know Ryan Tuberty and Claire Byrne, but I don't know Laura Fox. But I've seen the viewers will, who is on Dancing with the Stars or something. So she had an interview there. They'll even, in fact, flog your property for you. Speaking of property, Nick, because this only a month ago, then they were talking about Brendan Courtney, who is also an RTE star, I'm told, and they decided to feature his penthouse apartment at 34 Usher's Quay that you can pick up for £500,000. If you've got £500,000 there, Nick, and also, if you fit in the political mode, and only if they like your message, obviously RT will have you on. They had Holly Kearns on before, Christmas. It was embarrassing, actually, how much Holly Kearns was pushed by all the media platforms before Christmas. It was quite obvious, and also people like Nicola Sturgeon. And I think I just want to make clear, I'm not really criticizing any of those individuals. It's not really about them, but it's just about the entire, as I said, what I would call the Irish media, and how they are a PR machine, especially for their mates in the Irish media.
Yeah, look, RTE. I want RTE to be better. I grew up when RTE, in the golden age of RTE, where we had the Den TV, we had comedy nights on a Monday and Father Ted and things like that. I love RTE. Like I used to love RTE, and I want it back. Um, and it just depresses me now that the state of affairs, and it's both in front of camera and behind the camera. The operational team at RT is in chaos. The director of finance um,
Oh,
uh,
left, yeah.
left this week. Like that is huge. She was only there for a year. It's like it's becoming like the teacher at Hogwarts, the minister or the teacher of the dark arts. Every season there's a new teacher. They can't hold down a financial controller at RT because it's such a
Okay.
mess. Um, and to go to your point, dancing with this, it's called Dancing with the Staff is what the real name of it is, because it's the only way you get onto it is you have to be acceptable person that's already done some work with RTE. And the dangerous thing here is that it provides a platform for politicians. So
Yes.
there's now a senator who was handpicked by Simon Harris, and she was presented sport and maybe the weather. I forget her name. There was obviously Nina Carberry, went on to Dancing with the Stars after being a jockey. We had the Rosa Tralee winner, Mairead McGuinness, who was almost going to be president. She came from RTE as well, and she was a presenter on Ear to the Ground for years. And what happened with her is in 2004, she was a celebrity candidate for the MEP election for Europe, and then she got elected, and she stayed in Europe for 20 years, pretty
Yeah.
much. And people forgot that she was a celebrity candidate. And then it came around to the presidential, like, oh, she's a really serious politician. It's like, no, she's not. She's actually just a celebrity candidate that has hung around. Like,
Well, can she look? This is very rare, very unlike me. But can she acquire expertise and fairness over 20 years
oh
as an
yeah,
MEP?
look, we never heard her speak. I haven't really heard her speak. She bowed out of the contest. Anyway,
Oh, no. She was very high profile in relation to the Brexit debate. I do remember that. I
okay.
actually thought she was very good in that.
Okay, look, maybe she was great, but my point is there's a theme here.
Yes, I agree.
There's a theme here. Look, not just because you went to RT doesn't mean you're a bad person or you're not capable. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm
Yeah.
saying it is a launch pad for the right person. And you know the the, the danger is that the RT just keeps feeding this loop, and where does it end? Like, at what point does RT say, like, we just want to, we have to do right by the people. We have to cover these stories. We have to, prime time has to become an investigative tool. But that's never going to happen. There's no incentive for that to happen.
So do you watch, just out of interest now? Because I'm so, I mean, I was surprised when they got rid of Tonight with Katie Hannon. I thought she was, I thought she did an okay job. I mean, I think in a way there's not enough political affairs programs in Ireland on RT, in particularly compared to the BBC. The prime time I don't watch that much, or actually at all. Do you watch prime time?
I don't anymore. I like this is the problem. Like TV in general is a dying force. You know, like
Yes.
the age profile of people that watch TV because like I when I turn on the TV, my home TV, I go to YouTube first.
Yeah.
You know, there's this whole thing of pulling the cord. You know, there's more and more people just pulling the cord of terrestrial television, and they'll watch clips. But Ortiz strategy has not been to embrace YouTube or social media. It's been around the player.
Yeah.
You know, and they want people to log on to what is the worst, slowest website known to man. It is so terrible. It's so because I actually, again, I want RTE to be
You
good.
want to, like, yeah. No, I understand that.
like
Yeah,
like
yeah,
like have pride in our in and they do some like I actually like to watch Nationwide and Ear to the Ground. I think they're great programs. I wish they were on YouTube. I would
yeah.
watch them on YouTube. I'd be 10-minute clips of each segment, and it makes no sense. They can make money off this, but I personally know people that work for X and for YouTube. I've spoken to them, and these two different people, they've told me that they've approached the people, the powers that be in RTE for partnerships, and they're saying, we can do this, we can give you a good deal. There's revenue sharing here. This is a good opportunity for RTE. And RTE's head of partnerships or digital strategy is basically someone who's never been on the internet before and needs to retire. I don't know the name of the person. I've seen it before. I'm not going to name them, but and like you just look at Sky Sports. Sky Sports' presence on YouTube is enormous.
Oh, but they have a lot more money. They have a lot more money, though.
YouTube, it doesn't cost money. It doesn't cost money to go on YouTube. You're shooting the
I can see
content
your
anyway.
frustration with my
No,
tech ignorance.
yeah, but the content is already made.
Yes, yes.
You're just
Okay,
not putting it
okay,
up.
okay. They
Yeah,
should
yeah.
hire you, and then you should go on Dancing
No,
with
no,
Stars.
they
You're putting
shouldn't
in
hire
on
me.
Dancing with Stars.
They shouldn't hire me. There's an Irish guy, Paddy something's name, and he's got a YouTube channel where he teaches YouTubers how to do their channel. And I always say he should be the director general of RT. Um,
Right. Well, the interesting thing, I didn't know that. Am I? Is it now? I could be right. Who is the current director general? Is Kevin
Backers,
Backhurst? Now,
backers.
is he English?
He could be. Backers was in RTE, from 2010, I think, 2016. Then he went to the BBC, and then during the crisis
Oh
of
no, no,
Of
no,
Ryan
no,
Tubridy.
yeah. No, no, no. He was born in. I mean, not that I'm just. Yes, he is English. He
Yeah,
obviously. So you wonder why he isn't at the BBC. He went to St John's College in Cambridge, and now he is over at RT, making RT even more biased than the BBC, which is
yeah.
difficult.
Ju-
Yeah, he was promoter to producer in BBC 9 O'Clock News.
Yeah,
Um,
but
what else did he
but
do?
he got the job when all this chaos of Ryan Tubridy, and we'll come back to Ryan Tubridy in a second.
Yeah,
And D Forbes, happened, and it was capitulation at RTE 3 years ago, and they brought in an outside person, this guy Kevin Backers, but he was an outsider. He'd been working there for 10 years, and they brought him back in, and it's business as usual. Like they are actively trying to bring Ryan Tubridy back. It's so funny. It's what you said, like this puff piece article in the Irish Times this week.
yes.
He's on another show on Virgin Media. Like he's got the best agent in Ireland. Your man Noel, I forget his name. Noel, what's his name? Noel Kennedy. NK Promotions. Anyway, um, and there's a concerted effort to bring Ryan Tubridy back. And the man, I'm just like Ryan Tubridy. Like what talent? What is his talent? I actually don't know. What is? He's not funny. He's not brave. He doesn't have big opinions either side of the way. He's just bleh.
I know. Well, but I mean, I guess if you're a presenter, why am I defending all these people? If you're a presenter, I guess perhaps that's the attraction. I don't know. You're not really supposed to know their opinions, right? You're not. They're not supposed to take an issue. I mean, or who is it? Claire Byrne. I rate. I've always liked her. I definitely think she's better than Ryan Tuberty. Now, just in terms of while we're getting your opinion, so RTE we know are rubbish when it comes to social media and YouTube. Now, the one show that is never off my Twitter feed is the Tonight Show on Virgin. Both of us have been on that previously. What is your opinion on that one? That also has a new presenter. Oh yeah, because the presenters keep moving around.
Yeah, well, look, I went on that, and the most views they've ever gotten, I think, certainly last year was me when I walked into a trap. And look, I always say Kanye West has a song called "I Made That Bitch Famous," and that's what I say about that. But look, they're struggling for a new presenter. Uh, it was Vincent Brown for so many years. He made
Yeah,
that show. They've got Fiona on Sheehan, who's an excellent journalist. Don't get me wrong, excellent journalist. I'm not sure if he's the man to present it now. It's they're swapping it around who's going to present it. But
yeah.
look, television that format is dead. That whole format of a panel show, the
It's
new
cheap
format,
though. It's
yeah,
very
yeah.
cheap.
They need to lean more into podcasting. Okay, let's talk about my favorite podcast was Pat the Power all last year because the dynamic between Matt Cooper and Ivan Yates was, there was sparks flew. Ivan had lots of gossip. He's a talent. He's very interesting. And the minute he left, it's like, no, this show is not worth watching. So you have to have controversy. You have to have opinions, and the establishment are allergic to opinions because they don't like opinions.
Oh, I don't think. Oh, I think they've got plenty of opinions, Nick. They're just all
The
very,
problem is
very, very left wing. Very left wing.
they're allergic to the wrong opinions.
Yes, no, that's true, and of course they dictate what what the wrong opinion is. I mean, we'll end on. I'll get a final view for you on the Late Late Show, which I'm just allergic to. It's just the most ridiculous show. I can't even. But just an example, just for the viewer, as I said, I just think it's really extraordinary that you would have someone like Claire Byrne, who, let's face it, doesn't need any extra PR. Telling us all about her journey to her promotion, because the equivalent say so. The BBC, the flagship radio program over there is BBC Radio 4, the Today Show, and their presenter, also very, very heavily promoted over the years, is a guy called Amol Rajan, and he's leaving as well. And I could be wrong, but I doubt I will see him, on Graham Norton or Newsnight or BBC Question Time or whatever it is. Actually, the lack of an Irish Question Time is definitely a problem. They could do that show and it would be very watchable, but they won't, because someone will go on and say something that's not approved of. So when you're seeing these, as you say, puff pieces, RT presenters on RT shows, this is not normal. Like, it's not normal. They're using your tax fees or your license fee to promote themselves. But yeah, your final views on the Late Late Show, which is I'm
Well,
just
if
is
if,
just awful.
if the Late Show was,
It was good.
you were with Gay Byrne, like that, it was the pinnacle of the week.
Yeah.
If Gay Byrne was doing it now, he'd have Enoch Burke or the Burke family on the Late Late, not to support them, but to just get them out
Yes.
and let's see what. And that's
Yeah.
It's called television, or it's
Yeah.
called entertainment. But gee, that would never be allowed to happen. Or
No.
think of you think of any controversial or person. That's what Gay Byrne did. He got them on, and let people argue in front of them. And there's all these famous clips of people just getting too comfortable and saying the wrong thing. And that was
Mm.
his thing. And now
And
it's
actually,
just
Gay Byrne, he people kind of, you might think of him as old Ireland, but he's definitely was part of the liberal push, but in a much more honest and genuine way, right? Because he got people on, as you said, and they could argue it out, and the audience could make up their minds.
yeah, exactly. It was just open. But now I
Yeah.
suppose, and it kind of, I suppose society's got more divided.
Yes.
And that they're scared of what the arguments are. And some of this I always kind of say is like the alliance of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil has been a terrible, terrible thing because most people are Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael voters, and when Fianna Fáil were in power, the middle switched to Fine Gael, and in opposition, and they'd rally behind them, and vice versa. But now that they're together, all these Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael voters have no effective opposition to get behind, because they don't like Sinn Féin, they're not Labour supporters, they're not Social Democrats, and there is no effective opposition, and there is nobody bringing open dialogue and debate. And I think it's because of that.
Well, I think Aontú and Independent Ireland would probably, argue with you about that.
Well, they're
In
trying their
terms of,
best. Look, I'm fans of Patter's doing an incredible job. Like, he's a one man. He's just going at it every day. He's doing something else. He is so energetic. He doesn't get the credit he deserves. And Independent Ireland are doing great. Their performance over Mercosur was excellent. But yeah, these guys are at starting out. They need to keep doing this and building more momentum.
well, I mean, look, my view has always been there are too many. First of all, there are too many parties in Irish politics, and of course, you're still dealing with the fact that they don't split. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael didn't split on traditional political grounds or lines in terms of the left and right. Obviously, they split in relation to how to deal with the treaty over 100 years ago. But in America, it's split on economic grounds. In the same in the UK, the same in France. In fact, it goes back to the French Revolution, right and left, and who sat on
Yeah,
the right and left in the French Parliament. And that will always, that will always be a problem, along with the usual issues of ego and which you will get in politics. But speaking of just more traditional splits along left and right lines, I think you were having a quick look at the ever changing British landscape, and you were I don't know, did you listen, you picked up on a podcast that Dominic Cummings gave out. I don't know how much of him you listened to, just to
I,
give the viewer, just give a quick background. Most of them will probably be familiar with Dominic Cummings. He was, I think, special advisor in number 10, particularly to Boris Johnson, and also a key guiding hand in the Brexit debate. In fact, he features heavily in the Channel 4 docudrama. Which one? What do they call it again?
I
On
forget.
Brexit?
Yeah, I forget. But Dominic Cummings, like, since he's left and he's now turned, he's a very important cultural figure or voice in the UK at the moment. And I listen to a lot of his podcasts. He's done good ones with
Okay.
Sky News. He's very interesting to listen to because he knows how the inner workings of the beast. And what he says about ministers basically just being handed a brief and they don't actually make any decisions. It's all by the secretary generals or their equivalent. But in this podcast, it was on the Spectator. Very good podcast. Really, it was part one and two. I listened to part two. I thought it was more interesting. It was about the future outlook. And so what he said was that he hosted focus groups across the UK a few months ago, and the way the focus group went, every single one, this is what he said, was that we've been let down by the Tories. We can never vote for them again. We can't vote for Labour because they're screwing us right now. Okay, we're going to have to vote for reform. Nigel Farage, I don't know, he doesn't have a team, but look, we have to vote for him. Okay, what if he doesn't do it? We're going to have to leave. And then people go into the conversation about leaving the UK. I just thought it was very interesting because it's like the end of democracy. Like, in many ways, it's like this is democracy's last shot. Or a similar argument came around before Trump took office, and it's like, what happens if Trump fails? What
Yeah.
happens to the MAGA movement and all that pent up energy? What happens if he fails? That's a scarier thought than him being in power or anything like that. So same with Farage. If Farage gets in and he fails to deliver on his promises, that's really scary because then there are no other options. It's either leave or whatever. Maybe someone else will come along. I don't know, but that's the current thinking.
So I think, just to be clear, when you were saying in terms of the focus groups, I mean, he certainly doesn't need any more promotion. Yeah, I can see it there on the Spectator, on lawfare lockdowns and the broken British state. That's part one. Look, and when you were look, he is obviously excellent on focus groups, and in fact, in on that Channel 4 documentary Brexit. It was called the Uncivil War. There, I do remember from that an excellent scene. I think they get the they get people in a room. This is ordinary voters, and they it is a focus group issue, and they push they push it, and there's sort of a huge there was a sort of a breakdown between the voters, and they explain sort of why they would vote to leave. It's an excellent
Yeah.
it's an excellent scene. But look, so you were or he was saying that when they run the focus groups, a lot of the chat is we're from ordinary voters is we're going to leave Britain. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. And but like, why I'm interested in that is because like we have the common travel area with the UK. Like if anyone's leaving Britain, they're one of the first places they're going to come to is Ireland. So we must keep a really close eye all the time on the UK. And I always think that I have this theory, or maybe it's not theory, that Simon Harris and Keir Starmer work very closely together. That's my theory because they have family members
There's
advising them.
cousins, and there's yeah, there's
Yeah,
the two
and
cousins involved, isn't there?
my latest example of this is a few weeks ago. Simon Harris started a Substack, and so did Keir.
Yes, I saw it. It was incredible. I know. I
Well,
Yeah.
that's your territory. You're the queen of Substacks, but um, um,
Only.
but uh, Keir Starmer started one at the same time. So like I was thinking like these are coincidences, but my point is that whatever's happening, the policies that are creating the current situation in the UK, expect I wouldn't be surprised to see similar policies coming in here. Like digital ID is something that Keir Starmer is championing, but Simon Harris said when we have the European presidency, we're going to champion this as well. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Well, they've just killed digital ID now. That's been another Starmer U-turn.
killed is a strong word. They've kicked it down the road. They'll come back in another form.
Well, okay. I mean, so look, a few things on that. Yes, depending on, I don't know how much the viewers. I mean, the British. I did actually write a piece. I don't know where it's gone now. On similar in terms of, if the UK goes tits up, that's obviously going to have massive implications for Ireland, because first, as you said, it was a common travel area. Secondly, we still do a huge amount of trading with the UK, and a lot of people still go. A lot of Irish, especially young Irish, still go to the UK. So I was there for 20 years between when I was 20 and 40. And also, unlike perhaps some viewers, I just actually really like Britain. So I
Yeah,
don't want to see it go tits up. Now, in terms of the people involved, Morgan McSweeney, as you say, he is the chief of staff to Keir Starmer, arguably runs the place, and he was born and bred in Cork. And I know there is another, as you say, there is a family link. I think his cousin is in the Simon Harris team. I mean, how closely they align, I don't know. Obviously, the other big difference is Ireland is in the EU and the UK isn't. Look, I think I follow the UK media very closely. I think the doom loop is definitely there if you only get your news from, say, the Spectator, the Telegraph, or the Daily Mail. They do run the what I call the doom loop media a lot because it's a Labour government that's in power. So you're not going to get conservative media saying things are great. Everything's fantastic. What's to complain about? I mean, Dominic Cummings has been on the scene for a long time, but it should be remembered Dominic Cummings put Boris Johnson in and then took him down. And look, his big complaint has always been over there that the civil service is the inertia, and you can't get anything done. They're not even in their offices; they're all working from home. That is what he does. I'm not a huge fan of him. Other people are, but that's uh, and he was, as I said, he was a key player in Brexit, and the which I supported at the time because I was over there. But people can judge themselves as to how successful that has been for the UK in terms of whether people leave. Look, leaving your own home country is not an easy thing to do, and isn't something that people do, unless things are very, very bad. And you say, the most the obvious place for them to come is Ireland because of the common travel area. They don't need any paperwork. I obviously moved back but I'm Irish. My husband is English and he travels for work. He still travels over to London. Actually, Nick, my question for you is it always amazes me why more British people don't move to Ireland because the language is the same. You're not a million miles away from home, right? If you need to visit your granny in Gloucester, it's a Ryanair flight away. You want to go back to London, it's a Ryanair flight away. But I actually don't think a lot of people come because they go to Australia, they go to New Zealand, or the other much touted area is Dubai. Now, oh, I wouldn't be going to Dubai anytime fast. So it actually always surprises me, A, the number of British people who have never even visited Ireland, which I think would shock you. And secondly, yeah, why more of them don't decamp here? I think when people have a spouse that's Irish, that what often happens is they move back a bit later because the schools are better and the spouse wants to be closer to home. But just people who don't have any link at all, as I said, even though it's really easy, you don't have to apply for a visa, you don't have to do anything. It actually amazes me that more people don't do it, especially now when, for instance, things like private school fees is a huge difference. The university fees is a huge difference. Like stuff that you should actually be, that should influence your decision. And you can arguably still work in the UK because, because of obviously the internet and the flight is so short.
Yeah, I can only speak to my friends that are living there. Most of them are actually coming home, but maybe they were coming home anyway. So it's a bit
Yeah.
biased. But then we also have the problem with the north and how many people come through the north to seek asylum. That's a huge issue. So it's kind of different to what we're speaking about. But look, yeah, I take your point about the right wing media and the power of they have, and you're probably right there. That it's a very valid point. So maybe it's overblown somewhat, but then you do see that the property prices in London are tanking, not tanking, but falling off. But they were at a crescendo, and they've brought in high, millionaires taxes and things like that. And the Russians are all leaving, and people are going to Dubai. So look, there's probably just a natural cyclical move as well. And I'm not saying that London is going to go into chaos. It's always going to be London. London has been there for hundreds of, or I don't know, thousands of years. It's always going to be London. But what matters is the top 3, 4, 5% of what's happening, because on the margin, that's what creates
Yeah.
a spiral or something like that. So I'm just saying, London and the UK are their finances are a complete mess. They've a lot of debt. Sky News did a brilliant program there about the chemical industry and pharmaceuticals. Had the UK used to be world leader in making very simple chemicals, and that company Ineos, that um, uh, Jim Radcliffe owns. He's the other owner of Man United, along with the Glaziers. We got both them in, but his company. If you saw this 20-minute Sky News um, uh, report that only came out last week, you really see the decay of UK industry, and it's like, what is the answer? And there's so much debt. And what I say to Ireland is like, if it wasn't for the 10 companies and our low tax rate, the 10 companies pay, we would be in such a worse position. And knowing that and seeing it, you cannot be, if anything happens to those companies, we are so goosed. It'll be the mother of all recessions. And there was a good article in the Sunday papers this week. I think it was by the head of the ESRI in Ireland. And they were talking about Trump. If Trump, their opinion was that if Trump gets a lackey or a puppet into the Fed and reduces interest rates, it will have devastating consequences for Ireland. Now, that's what they said. I'm not sure I agree with it, but the point is that Ireland is subject to very macro trends, and we would
Yeah.
be in a worse position than the UK. So I just think paying very close attention to what's going on in the UK, as what's going on in the US, is very important right now. And so I'm always keeping an eye out.
Yeah, look, I agree. I think the structural problems in the UK are really significant. You know, if you, I was over in London twice before Christmas, and you wouldn't think anything is wrong. But I mean, just to take the NHS for an example, you know, it's a socialised health system with an aging population. Whatever way you look at that, it's not good. Their pensions are big. Industry, you say, is going. The structural problems, unfortunately, are there, and this is the problem with, Dominic Cummings might even say you can vote through your various governments. You can go Tory, you can go Labour, you can go Reform, but the question is, can you make the changes that are necessary to, as I said, the structural problems that are there. I mean, the NHS is probably just one example. I have a piece today in Gript just saying there were two. I mean, you were talking about an interview with Sky News. There was one last week on their student debt is over there is crazy, and also a lot of it will be defaulted, so that adds more debt onto the UK economy. But there were two young women on there, one who had a debt of 67,000 and another of 43,000 because of a specific plan that was introduced about a few years ago. And then at the weekend, was on social media quite a bit. You may have not seen it, that the abortion figures were really high, 300,000 of um, the last year that they can calculate, which is 2023, which is an 11% increase. And it's the increase that you're interested in. And, I don't think you have to be like a raging pro lifer to think, well, whether or not you're willing to have children is a good indication of how you view the future of your country and how confident you are. And, those figures obviously, to me, say, well, they're not the young women, at least, don't seem confident enough to start families. And I wonder, as I said, even if the amount of student debt they're in is linked. I mean, people will say it's just, it's correlation, not causation, but people don't make these decisions in isolation, is what I'm trying to say. There's social and economic factors in there. And if you had an 11% increase in anything, you'd be asking yourself why.
Yeah, no, the abortion figures are stark and they're almost taboo. Again, that's something that Irish probably media won't like to discuss, or it's a hot topic because, what actually, there was an interviewer on the morning show, Ireland AM, or one of those, before Christmas, and she was talking about abortion. And I've mentioned this before, and she called abortion a miracle
Oh
because
yeah, yeah.
St. Bridget had abortion and it was a miracle or something. That was her argument. And I was like, whoa, that is like
But what
that
I
is so far out there. And now we have these figures, and it's just like, okay, look, your body, your choice, that's fine, but we have to, make it easier for people to have families.
Yeah, I agree, and I think what I saw that clip, and I have to say, to me, it wasn't. It's obviously, I think, offensive to a lot of people, but I also felt it was so clearly designed, to go viral and to go all over social media. Like, it wasn't a serious discussion, and I think that's what I resent most about the Irish media. Well, why don't you get somebody on there who said, who has gone through this and was like, I'd really like to start a family, but I don't feel I'm in a position to at the moment because of
Yeah.
housing or because of the jobs or whatever it is, right? Rather than someone just saying something that's so clearly just, yeah, I mean, you could say offensive, but it's just most people who go through it won't be using that kind of language. But that won't get you the social media hits you want, right? So this is why they default to these very shallow, if you don't find it offensive, it's at least a very shallow way of discussing it. And you're not asking people, why, as you say, if you want to make it easy for people to have families, or at least easier, then that's a much more difficult but a much more serious conversation that you should have. But as you said, the Irish media won't touch it. It's I mean, the English media might not either, although you're more likely to. So look, we'll, as you say, they are our closest neighbours, and it's important, specifically with the common travel area, to see how to keep a close eye on the UK, and there are always a lot of Irish links there. I think the final thing we want to discuss, I think, is that I reviewed a book called Against the Machine on the Unmaking of Humanity. I'm still reading it, by Paul Kingsnorth. I don't know if you, I think I wrote an article about it, and you thought it was
Yeah, I
it
thought it was
was.
a brilliant
Interesting.
article.
No,
It comes to, we get these lists every few months about the top issues in the country, and
mm,
the top issues are housing, immigration, and cost of living. But really, like, in the top three needs to be addiction to phones or social media, or smartphones or social media, um, and because that's actually the layer that's driving people apart. Okay, and like this week in the news, um, there was all this talk about Grok, and they're the media are coming after Grok and X because X is an enemy to the Irish Times or any legacy media because they're just competitors in the media industry. But your article was brilliant. I recommend everyone go read it. Just about your experience. Are you in this waiting room and you saw all these kids on their phone and nobody was looking up, and the quotes from the book were relevant. But what we need to talk about this, and there was another hyper viral article on X this week, and it's I think it has 100 million reads at the moment, and it talks about how on these apps and on social media, women are more likely to go further left, and men are likely to actually stay more center or go left or a little bit right, but women are more likely to go really into deep left, and that's what the divide. These things are dividing us, and nobody is calling it out. So I don't know what the answer is. Limit smartphones to underage, I think, is a good idea, or start promoting more dumb phones. Just bring back the Nokia 3210, and um, I think especially around kids, with my own son at the moment, it's so easy to just whip out the phone and put on something, and it's just an automatic soother. And we make a conscious effort not to do it, but like I don't know how long we can hold back the tide. But what we do is we put on the big screen, and so my kind of thing is a big screen is better than a small screen because at least we're all watching the big screen together. It's somewhat communal, where we can discuss what we're watching and debate it, or just enjoy it or whatever. But social media is not so. It's anti-social media.
yeah, I mean, I have to say, I was kind of surprised that you like the piece because I have you down as a very pro tech person. Look, I think there's a number of issues, and you can kind of feel helpless. I actually found the book quite depressing as well. If you let it, I mean, the I think conservative or right wing people are always perhaps rightly cautious when they hear people propose, limits for social media or limits on smartphones, or whatever, right? Because they think this is an attack on free speech, and really this is just used as a Trojan horse to shut down our free speech for adults. And I think there's an element of truth to that. Certainly, I'm sure Simon Harris and Holly Kearns and the rest of them would love to shut it all down and for us all to go back to watching RTE and BBC, and for us all to have the accepted opinions, namely their opinions. But when you're talking about children, this is very different. And in the English Times today, Hilary Cass, Baroness Kess, who led the NHS review on gender dysphoria, and basically pushed back heavily against the transgender craze over there, and said this is harmful to children, has also another letter, not no, a piece in the Times saying it is now time to ban social media for under 16s, and I think they've already done it in Australia. I think they are going to do it in the UK. It's much more likely under a Labour government, and I am hopeful. I think the trend is moving that way. And I just say, as I said in the piece, I went into this room, and there were four teenagers, and they were all on their phones. And actually, it's every Saturday. The Saturday just gone, they were still all on their phones. And I just don't think people, it's not that I've got a problem with the internet, or I don't have a problem with mobile phones. The real change came with putting the internet on the mobile phone, right? And I mean, I grew up without smartphones. I'm not sure about you, but I think if you think about how addictive it is for adults, right? And even adults who didn't grow up with it, just think how it is so addictive for children, and they have never had they haven't had the chance to grow up without it. So I am probably the last generation to grow to remember, what it was like before we had the internet in our pockets the whole time. And I just think, so what she talks about here, as I said, Baroness Cass, who is a clinician. I just have to read it out to you. And it's not a case of, she's describing real harms here. And she says, Cass said doctors have described seeing distressing cases of sextortion, cyberbullying, and gaming addiction. And there was one thing she said. We were told about children who could not leave their bedrooms, let alone go to school, about the impacts of inactivity, including obesity. We had heard children suffering post-traumatic stress syndrome after seeing beheadings online, or videos of animals being tortured and who then killed pets themselves. I mean, once you put a smartphone in a teenager's hand, like, you have no idea what you're getting into. As I said, I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. They both have smartphones. My daughter is better able to handle it than my son. But for the next two, we're really going to try and hold out as long as possible, because
And
you just have
what
no idea
what
what you're putting into their hands once you do that.
how valid or likely is the option of giving them a dumb phone?
So I think, uh, uh, my it is hard, okay, because it's hard if your teenager is like, if all their say if all the social engagements are organized on the phone, right? The risk is then they don't get invited to the parties. And the thing is, I will drive them to parties. Back in the day, it used to be the strict parents wouldn't let you to parties, but because I put such a value on, face to face contact and real life experiences, I will drive my children to the teenagers to the parties, because I think that's better than them sitting at home on their phones. So I think what I would probably do is they'll have laptops, and they seem to have to have laptops for phones or for school. So they can have the laptops, and maybe they can organize through the laptop, and then honest. So there's two options: is to go hardcore and do the Nokia phone. Okay, or there's another, and I'm not plugging here. There's another phone called a balance phone, which is it's a Samsung phone, and you have to download all this stuff onto it. It's called a balance phone, and you can get WhatsApp on it, Spotify, and I think that's about it. There's no Snapchat, no TikTok, no Instagram. You can't do anything else on it.
Yeah,
So if the third daughter, who's 11, gets if it gets to sort of, I'm now a social pariah, that may well be what we would do. But look, I'm not saying, look, when people say, oh well, you should just say no. Well, that's easy for you to say, because the risk, as I said, is that your teenager is a social pariah, and this is why collective action is so important. And I think I'm hearing different things in relation to the Australian social media ban, and a lot of the pieces are like, well, the teenagers got around it, but at least you're creating friction. The problem
yeah,
is that it's just so easy to go on there. Like, it drives my husband crazy, is that I often turn my phone off at around 8 p.m. and I put it in the car. Like,
right.
so that's like how much friction I have to generate for me not to go on it. But like, when you see young families and stuff, look, I've done it myself, but on screens and stuff in the restaurant, you just like, it just means your child will never learn to sit. You're just actually making it worse. And but I think across the media, I can definitely see a big pushback on it for the teenage. I mean, what adults do, that's up to them. But to hand it to a child, and people say, oh well, you can't turn it around. No, you can turn it around, because remember, mothers used to smoke over their children's cots,
Yeah, well,
right?
they still have the phone out pushing the pram,
Yeah,
so
but what can happen is that if enough social stigma
yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
generated, it
No,
can, for
I
chil
agree.
for social media use around children, at least, people don't smoke over cots anymore. People
No,
don't
no.
smoke in people's houses. That would be considered weird, right? If I went into your house and just decided to light up a cigarette, you'd be like, "Oh my God."
Yeah,
50 years ago, people did that.
yeah. No, I I think showing one of these in front of a child should have
Uh,
a incredibly bad stigma, public stigma around it. And you're never going to ban it, but that stigma alone, like again, I feel it myself. I'm with my son. If it's the middle of the night and he can't get back to sleep,
yeah.
it's so easy to just whip it out and go, "Look, here you go. I'm so tired. Just
That's why
watch
you
this."
lock it in the car.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but like, so this is something I'm battling with every day. And even, but at home, we find ourselves like I'm scrolling or whatever, and you're on your phone for work, you're on your phone for different reasons. But yeah, it's genuinely as I started this out saying, it must become one of the top two or three issues.
Yeah,
But because we all secretly enjoy it so much, like it's so easy to just find a quiet room
yeah.
for an hour and go scrolling on the internet. Like it's so easy. So we actually we have to wean ourselves off it.
Look, I think I've said this before in different substacks and different pieces. If you do want to, like, say, change your relationship with the internet, Cal Newport, who wrote two books on this, digital minimalism, and what was the other one? He's really good just in terms of um really easy sort of like habits that you can make that will, you're still on the internet, you can still use social media, but his overall philosophy is make your phone just a phone. So take off all of the apps,
Yeah.
don't have it in your pocket. And if you want to do that, do it on your laptop, do it on your
Yeah, yeah,
desktop,
yeah.
and preferably do it on a desk. So I mean, we have an office, and I always just leave my phone in the office. I very rarely have it on me unless I'm listening to a podcast, because you will take it out.
It's a great
um
feeling walking around or getting going on a drive or whatever without your phone.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
actually it's like,
yeah,
oh, I just don't have it. So hot, like nothing I can do. It's
yeah.
done.
And
And
like, or if you're going to a restaurant or lunch or whatever, just leave it in your car. You
yeah,
don't need it for the hour. Or
yeah.
if you desperately need to be in contact, I actually do have a Nokia phone now. Just bring your
I
Nokia.
I actually think this is a very good point actually. During the week, there was these videos that emerged online of these avatars. So I would be doing something, and then but the image that you'd be seeing was some like young teenage girl, selling a product. Have you seen these? It's like AI
No.
avatars. So
Oh, okay.
basically, you could never know. Social media and the internet is becoming less real every single day. It's getting faster and faster. And there's
Yeah.
there's an account on X called Autism Capital. I'm not sure if you follow it.
Oh, yeah, it's come up on my feed. All
It's
right.
it's
Yeah.
very funny and they're very good. It's a very pop culture, like that is the heart of internet culture. Autism Capital. They're very good. But they went on a rant, whoever does the account last week, about how they retweeted this video that went viral of these AI avatars and goes, they said this is the end of social media. It may not be right now, but this is the end of it because people
Oh,
will actually value real life experiences more than social media because social media is just going to become polluted with AI. And I'm seeing
yeah.
that already on my feed. I am literally addicted to X. I'm on X all the time, but I see so much more AI slop. It's getting the feed is getting faster in many ways.
Okay.
I can't enjoy something as much. And now what I'm turning to is more YouTube
Yeah.
because YouTube is longer. I know the people that are presenting are real people. You can't fool me on YouTube as much as you can fool me on X. And
Yeah.
I think AI could actually completely disrupt social media.
Yeah, I mean, I've reduced my time on Twitter. I have to say, I sometimes I end up feeling like pretty smug. I think it definitely has gotten worse. I know people on the left are like, oh, it's a right wing crazy place with crazy conspiracy people. I think a lot of people have seen a change in Twitter. I mean, I do think it's kind of it's a sort of a
Look,
crazy house now.
depends what
Um,
they're going to try and improve it. But it depends what you search. Like I use it a lot
yeah.
for searching for like AI companies, investments, or
Okay.
things like that. And like my feed is completely different. Like I nearly need if you ever used X Pro, where you can have multiple feeds open at one time and they can be segregated by category. And so if you have an Irish politics one, like that's, or world politics, you might get all the right wing hate or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you have like a sports one, it's brilliant. Or if you have
Okay.
betting or investing or something like that, brilliant. Like honestly,
Yeah.
the smartest people talking about investing or AI innovation are all on X. That's where they are, and then they do long form podcasts on YouTube. Um,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
but so it depends. You have to tailor your feed.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to how we introduced the story, and we'll have to finish up. Is that,
Yeah,
as you said, I mean, people when they were looking at the research, once social media came online, why people should care about it is the women really, as you say, it correlates completely with the women going very, very left wing. The men sort of stayed in the middle. And when we say left wing as well, I don't mean sort of old school socialists. I think we
yeah,
mean,
yeah. Whoa,
woke. And some of the statistics coming out now, I did see on Twitter this morning in terms of never married women. It's like in America, and at least it's
yeah,
doubling the amount of people alone, and this will really shape politics, because if you're a single woman, you vote very differently to if you're like a married woman with kids. That's
yeah.
just
That was all.
that's just
It-
obvious.
yeah, and I think actually David Quinn tweeted this out a few weeks ago. There was that book a few years ago called Bowling Alone, and now it's
Oh yeah.
scrolling alone.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he definitely did not coin that phrase. Yeah, no. Look, I
You know,
agree,
okay,
but
well, yeah,
just
yeah, scrolling alone.
that's,
Anyway, yeah,
sorry, I'm being a bit mean. Yeah, look, leave your phone in the office. I think I did see the last thing I saw on Twitter was some guy coming on. He's very, very well known, but I don't feel like knowing him. He was like, I don't know how you feel about it. He was like, just be your real self with your spouse, and everything will be fine. And I'm thinking, really? If we all did that, I'm not sure. No, what, your cranky, sleepy self? Like, no, this is
yeah,
terrible advice. Don't do that. So then I just got off, and so if that's the advice they're handing out, like, yeah, that's not going to last well.
no,
Look, it was we've gone about 10 minutes over. It was great chatting to you as always, Nick. We better leave it there.
very good.
Ironically, on the laptop, people listen to this on their smartphones. Just listen to us while you're doing your laundry. That
Yeah,
I'll
do
allow that.
something. Yeah.